I'm back. Second video of the day. Probably not gonna release this until a few days later. I don't want to fucking kill you guys with content here. But since I have a spare half an hour or so, I figured I'd jump back into my record collection. I haven't done one of these videos in a while. Show you what's in the stacks. We left off right at the beginning of the D's. So, jumping right into it. We have Bloodied But Unbowed by D.O.A. Fucking groundbreaking Canadian hardcore. They were the band that coined the term hardcore punk. And just to signify the punk rock that had stayed around after the initial movement of '77. Canadian band that really were trailblazers as far as their touring routes and everything. Them and Black Flag and the Dead Kennedys were playing places nobody else would, like in the middle of nowhere, in Oklahoma and in the Midwest, as well as, you know, the coast and everything. Music was pretty inspired by that 70s punk stuff, but ramped up a little bit more stripped down. Great band, still going, three-piece, kind of gruff vocals. Vancouver, I believe, Canada. Joey Shithead, great lyricist, vocalist, songwriter. He's got a cool autobiography called I Shithead if you want to peep it. There's an insert with Billy Bragg ads and the rap music for Rat People LP, which is a great comp from back then. Tales of Terror, cool hardcore band from back then. This came out on CD Presents. I believe it got reissued on Enigma years later. But yeah, fucking awesome early hardcore punk. Also Canadian. Dead Brain Cells, DBC. I love this band. I had a cassette of this, and it lived in my car for a while. I think I actually sent it to Marty as a VCLT, but this is very, it's almost like technically precise, but still kind of crossover punky kind of thrash metal. The album after this, Universe, they got a lot more weird, technical, almost kind of like their country mates in Voivod there. But yeah, fucking awesome. Canada could do no wrong with thrash in the 80s as far as I'm concerned. So many good bands, you know. Sacrifice Razor, etc., etc. This is the self-titled DMZ record. I actually picked this up here in Salem right after moving here from a place called Witch City Consignments. It's kind of a junk store consignment shop. And man, I've pawed through their records so many times since moving here and haven't gotten anything else. It's all like Linda Ronstadt and shit now. But this was actually sealed when I got it. It's in great shape. This is early Boston power pop kind of punk rock kind of shit. Like, not really exactly, but if you like stuff like the Knack and the Ramones, this would be up your alley. Great fucking energetic stuff though, real pissed and loud though. Great melodic shit, good pop sensibilities. This was on Sire. The Sire labels, it's on black vinyl, of course. How much should I pick for this? Oh. It's weird, they write their prices inside the jacket of this. Yeah, 10 bucks. It's a good deal. Classic record. Get into some D.R.I. Obviously, I already talked a bunch about D.R.I. with my flashbacks videos, 91, 92, and all that. But I have a few more of their records. Crossover. This is the first kind of metal-tinged record they did after dealing with it. It came out on Death Records. Metal Blade, Restless. It's got the Death Records logo there. Nice Slayer influence. You could tell that they were influencing Slayer and Slayer were influencing them. A little bit more stripped down and fast than what came later. They definitely got a little bit more slowed down and moshy on the next records, but not even that much. They were always a pretty fast band, but yeah, more metal musicianship on this. Gotta love the obligatory thrash collage on that. One after it's great too, Four of a Kind. Cartoonish Mad Magazine style cover art there. Great choruses on this as far as the songs go. The Manifest Destiny, More Blood on the Hands of Christ. They called themselves Christians and gave themselves the rights. Talk about Native Americans. Slumlord Doesn't Care. Suit and Tie Guy. Great mosh riff in that song. Classic Headbangers Ball video. Metal Blade, obviously. Then I got Dealing With It. Already talked about that. And Thrash Zone, already talked about that as well. But all classics, all mandatory for me. Then I got this boot of D.Y.S's Brotherhood here. It's got a almost unlistenable live set from CBGB's on the other side. Straight edge center labels there. Classic Boston hardcore, huge influence on the youth crew movement. Not so much even just in musical style, but style of dress. You know, no motorcycle boots and spike bracelets here. They look like a bunch of little jock dudes. Music's super pissed, short songs. Little tidbits of slow parts that were like proto kind of mosh kind of stuff. Dave Smalley, the vocalist, went on to do Down by Law, sang for Dag Nasty on one record, sang for All on one record. Did some other shit I can't think of right now. But classic Boston hardcore. You gotta love, I mean, this could easily be a black metal record. Look at that. Then we got Damnation, No More Dreams of Happy Endings on Jade Tree. Came out in the early 90s. No, mid-90s, 95. Band that I got to see a lot around that time when I was going to shows in Syracuse. Depressive, angry hardcore with a very, very, very metallic side to it. Like a lot of hardcore bands, they had the token metal member who was the guitarist. And they had I feel like they almost kind of had that entombed guitar tone too, like way before that was a thing for anybody else outside of Sweden. But very dirgy kind of stuff, proto-metalcore. A lot of lyrics dealing with suicide and depression. Heavy, heavy stuff. Highly recommended. We'll get into my Damned stuff here. This is a LP that I've had for ages. A friend of mine from Syracuse that unfortunately passed away last year gave this to me. The fella in question was really into the Exploited and GBH and the Sex Pistols and a few others, but was pretty focused on like a very specific sound for punk that he liked. He didn't like most of the songs on here, so he gave it to me. Fortunately for me, I like everything the Damned has done almost, that I've heard. Everything up to their 80s material anyway. And this is a really nice double LP, best of kind of deal. It's pretty beat up from what I remember, but I've held on to it for sentimental reasons. Actually, it looks okay. But what's really cool is that you have all these family trees, what all the members did, what they went on to, and what the bands they were connected to. You got Eddie and the Hot Rods there, Missing Men, Rat Scabies Runners. On the back, you can see there all the people that have been involved. Algie Ward, who was in Tank. Robert Fripp from King Crimson was involved with the Damned somehow. Lemmy, you know, what a legendary band, you know. You want to have your mind blown by somebody that's like really knows what's up. Bip Bop Booms went on a crazy wormhole. It's like a 3-video thing. I think he just called it the Wormhole, where he links all this shit. And the Damned and Hawkwind have a lot to do with it. It's just fucking mind blowing how much that dude knows. Anyway. Got Music for Pleasure here. This came out, I don't know where in the lineage. I think it came out before Phantasmagoria. It's still pretty punk. It's not like very death rocky like Phantasmagoria. 87. Maybe it came out after. Yeah, I guess it did. Maybe it was Return to Form. I don't know. But it's got Problem Child, which is a great song. Don't Cry Wolf. Alone, Your Eyes. Yeah. Kind of more power pop. You know, not as balls out as their late 70s records, but definitely great. This is an Earmark repress. And if I remember correctly, this is on Clear, which is nice. Earmark is one of those labels, not as bad as, but kind of like, sort of like Back on Black. Earmark's way more punk-oriented. where like I have a Celtic Frost record on Earmark, I think Morbid Tales, and I have a few of some Motorhead stuff that they put out. Some of the quality is not that great on some of them. Some of it's totally fine. From what I can remember, this record sounds fine, but I digress. Phantasmagoria, I talked about this recently, but it's the Damned's Goth record. Not that it sounds like Bauhaus or Sisters of Mercy, but there's some gloominess on it. I mean, when you have a vocalist that dresses like a vampire, it's kind of a natural thing to go to, I suppose, but Grimly Fiendish, just fucking jam. Oh, by the way, we're listening to Room of Shadows by Pagan Altar. Yep, I bought the CD too. Love this band that much. This is for, you know, the car stereo. And when I'm feeling too lazy to flip records over. It's fantastic. Check it out if you like traditional doom. So we got the Danzig self-titled. Original pressing. On Def Jam, Def America, whatever. Ooh, look at that. Great stuff. My favorite is still Lucifuge, but this is probably, I don't know, it's tough to choose. I like Lucifuge a lot. I like Danzig 3 a lot. This obviously has its jams. Twisted Cain, of course. Mother, of course. Am I Demon? Great rootsy Black Sabbath, AC/DC stuff. Danzig coming out of Samhain and kind of experimenting with goth stuff a little bit. Going to straightforward rock and kind of shit. Coming from the Misfits, of course. Great record. Paid a little bit more than I wanted to for it, but these are kind of hard to come by these days, so very important record, so glad to have it. Darkness Descends by Dark Angel on Combat. Little rough, little beat up. Gold stand promo there. Thrash classic. The progress from We Have Arrived to this is nuts. We Have Arrived being more of like a speed metal kind of record. I'm sure Gene Hoglan joining the band had something to do with that. Just, you know, classic satanic thrash. What can you say? Definitely a lot of parts, a lot of technicality. They took that even further on the second one, which is where the cutoff point is for me on Leave Scars. Different vocalist on this, Ron Reinhardt. This is also on Combat. Oh, this is nice. I didn't realize this was in here. This is an order form for Combat. All kinds of cool stuff. DBC's in here, Crumbsuckers, The Accused. Nice printed inner sleeve there. And with Combat, we have to check, and it's camo. Let's backtrack and see what we have for Darkness Descends here for the labels. Fucking bummer. Oh, there we go. This needs to be cleaned, man. Anyway. Camo center labels on both. Fucking so good. Transylvanian Hunger. Repress, Dark Throne. Only one I own on vinyl. Masterpiece of hypnotic blasting. Norwegian BM. I'm sure you know it. Or you've at least seen the iconic cover art. Taking that Von influence, making it theirs. Groundbreaking, of course. Get into some Dead Can Dance LPs here. This is the first one. Self-titled. This is a reissue years ago. Really nice packaging here. This is when they kind of involved less musical influences from around the world. They were a little bit more of a post-punk Joy Division or Killing Joke kind of influence band. But already those kind of influences were starting to seep in. But Dead Can Dance is great. Everybody should give them a shot. Fucking brilliant band. De Profundis, Out of the Depths of Sorrow. What a jam that is. This is Spleen and Ideal. All these are on 4AD. Second album, maybe? I'm trying to remember. I don't know. Center labels, fucking cool. They definitely started getting plenty of more influences from medieval music from all eras, all areas of the world there. And this is an older pressing. I don't know if it's a first or not. All kinds of like instruments on this, instrumentation. Bunch of violins and violas and cellos and trumpets and fucking trombones. Oboe. There's an oboe. Oboe. Military snare. Dude on military snare, man. Love that cover art. Mausoleum. Some DKs here. Fresh fruit for rotting vegetables, the first one. Classic. Sarcastic. Maniacal punk. Old pressing, I don't know which one. Got the AT bat, of course. Kill the Poor. This is super early on, you know, it's like 79. The original wave of hardcore, I guess you would say, you know, along with D.O.A. It's a little bit more mid-paced than like punk. They get progressively faster and more hardcore and weirder on the records to come, like on this one, which is my favorite. Plastic Surgery Disasters, which I believe I've talked about before, but just the odd kind of psychedelic and surf influences on this, and the paranoid vibe that Jello Biafra creates with his lyrics. It's a really ugly picture of America he paints, and as I've stated, I don't know if I agree with, well, any musician that I listen to 100%, but I like the way the guy gets his point across. Reissue on Manifesto Records. This might be post the falling out with Biafra and his bandmates where they got the rights to the records. If that's the case, I kind of feel bad about owning this, but what are you going to do? Got a CD booklet here. All that crazy Winston Smith art. Got In God We Trust Inc. This is face ripper of a fast record. I feel like it's kind of like the equivalent of Earth A.D. for the Dead Kennedys. They were kind of keeping up with the Joneses and speeding things up to a thrash pace. Awesome fucking recording. Religious Vomit. All religions make me want to throw up. All religions make me sick. Cool shit. Over in a heartbeat, but man, you just want to play it over and over again. I picked this up at Crypto Comics in Albany, New York, which was the place that I would have to go for punk records, crust records, most of the time. My local record store, Oliver's, would occasionally have cool stuff in, but it was usually snatched up by the employees who weren't really being paid. So I'd go down to shows in Albany. This is around 95, 96. And this guy, Nate Wilson, who went on to run Gloom Records, who has played in Devoid of Faith and Das Oath and a bunch of other bands, he ran a distro out of this comic book shop, and I got tons of great stuff there. This was one of the many things that I bought. Cool story, bro. Got a couple Dead Moon records. So, Fred Cole just left us. Sadly, he passed away this year. I was a latecomer to this band. I remember a bunch of my friends were gushing over them after they played Chaos and Teos one year that I didn't go. Both these records are excellent. Unknown Passage and In the Graveyard. Haven't spun them in a long time. Perhaps I should, in memory of Fred there. But it's very rootsy DIY, garagey kind of punk stuff. It almost reminds me of like if Neil Young and Crazy Horse were more of a punk band. I don't know if that's been said before or is a cliche thing to say, but I don't know. That's kind of where it's coming from to me. But fucking cool band. They have a really, really cool documentary if you can track it down. We got Dead Stop Live for Nothing. This was on Havoc Records, came out in the early 2000s. Belgian, I think. Hardcore band. Cool gatefold there. Oops. Fast pissed, in your face, catchy stuff. Can't really go wrong if you're like a fan of early early AF or Negative Approach, that kind of stuff. Kind of tougher side of fast early 80s style hardcore. Their other album, Done With You, is even better, but this record's awesome. We got Fixation on a Coworker by Dead Guy on Victory Records. After that, discordant bashing chords, unhinged vocals and lyrics, odd pop culture manipulation in the artwork aesthetics, just really fucking ugly music played by ugly people. I know one member came from Rorschach, who were incredibly influential. Converge wouldn't sound like Converge without Rorschach, for example. But this is a great just mess of a fucking mid-paced nightmare of a fucking personal kind of hardcore record. When the Death reissues started coming out a year or two ago, I snatched them up as soon as I could. I've had all my Death on cassette for years. I would love to have like Combat Pressings of Death, but you know, I'd rather have a bunch of cool records than one really expensive record most of the time. And Relapse did a pretty good job of these. They sound good. They sound fine. So I got Leprosy here. You should know this. Classic death metal. A little less frenetic and crazy than the first one, of course. A little bit more identifiable riffs on it. They don't have two records that sound the same, that's for sure. There's always some kind of progress. Probably my favorite overall. I do love Leprosy, Scream Bloody Gore, and Human quite a bit. Spiritual Healing, like I said, a few updates back, never really grabbed me. And we got Scream Bloody Gore. I really like the embossing on this. I also got the triple CD with all the bonuses on it because I'm a fucking nerd. We got Young Chuck. I got both of these on black vinyl. You know, I know that there's a lot of ugly splatter colors, but I don't really play that shit most of the time if black's available. I do like the center labels, they look nice. Yep, classic thrashy death metal, deathy thrash metal. And then we have another band called Death, a different band called Death, for the whole world to see. Now the story behind this band is pretty interesting. These guys are from Detroit, played in the 70s. I'm trying to remember the whole story. They have an excellent documentary that was on Netflix for ages. I don't think it is anymore, but you can check. It might be on YouTube for all I know. Band called Death. These guys ended up moving to Burlington, Vermont, and started a reggae band after this band kind of fizzled out. One of the guys stayed back in... Yeah, it's three brothers, and one of them stayed back in Detroit. And he had all these interesting concepts for this band, and I know their second album was a little bit more psychedelic and, you know, progressive. I haven't heard that one. But they had people from Motown Records and stuff interested in them. And he refused to change the name of the band. He had this whole concept with the band being called Death and just wouldn't budge on it, and the record companies weren't going for it, unfortunately. They were a great band. Keep on Knockin', Rock and Roll Victim. It's very much ballsy Motown rock and roll. It doesn't sound like Iggy and the Stooges or MC5, but you can see how it would fit in comfortably next to those bands. Some songs like Politicians in My Eyes is almost like a proto-hardcore kind of song. I heard rumors that these guys, like their singles weren't circulated very well, but they were an early influence on the Bad Brains. I read that somewhere. I don't know if that's true or not. I certainly think Politicians in My Eyes kind of sounds like early Bad Brains stuff. But it's a fucking, regardless, it's proto-punk, it's rock and roll, and it's really, really fucking great shit. There's the guys in the band. Track down that documentary if you can find it. It's probably on DVD for like a couple of bucks if it's not available streaming somewhere, which I'm sure it probably is. But definitely worth the watch. This is definitely worth the listen. Just great shit. All right. So, 2 in 1 day. Step to that.